I start off with my tempered piece of glass. Going to start off with the first color, palette knife, sponges, a sponge roller, some texture pieces. Now these are texture pieces that I make from the sleeves off of coffee cups from Starbucks or one of those places. Here's one that I picked up recently that has a kind of nice nubble texture. I also have a palette that I use that I would like to put my color on so I can do my transfer over here. So let me clear up here just a little bit. It starts off with a clean sheet of glass. I'm going to use this roller right off the bat because I like the way it looks and I like the texture that it gives, and I think it's a nice first layer. You have to understand that when I'm working on this, I'm working in reverse order so that this will actually be the top layer when I get done. So the first thing I'm going to do is take some of my paint and I'm going to put it on my secondary palette, and I will then grab my palette knife and spread it out a little bit, make it a little bit easier to get on the roller. Then simply roll my roller through the paint, pick up that color, remove this palette, and I'm going to go right directly onto my surface. And I can do as many patterns or as many passes as I would like on this, and I'm just going to keep doing this one section over and over again until I get a pattern that I like. Now as soon as I get this pattern down, it has to dry. I cannot do anything with this until the next color is ready to go on. So I'm going to put my roller in water and I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll be back. Since I'm using acrylic paints, it only took a few minutes for this to dry, so I'm getting ready to do the next layer. In an effort to do that, I want to try some of these pattern pieces that I have that I think could be kind of interesting. So I'm going to take a glass palette, and I just like working on glass palettes, and I'm going to use some liquid acrylic here, and I'm going to take a hard rubber brayer and just kind of spread it around a little bit in an effort to get a nice even layer. And then I'm going to take my pattern piece and I'm going to lay it down right into this paint and then apply it. And I think you can see I'm getting some really nice dot work here, which I think is sort of interesting. And I'm just going to continue to cover this area with these dots in an effort to see what it does. I think it's kind of an interesting idea, and I rather like this actually. It almost has the quality of a halftone print somehow. So it's this I think is going to be rather successful. Okay, I've got this layer done, and I think what I'm going to do is allow this to dry and clean up and get ready for the next layer. So that's it for texture pieces. One of my favorite tools is called a Gouda bottle, and it's generally used for silk painting, but it has these wonderful little tips on it, these little metal tips, which get screwed onto the tip of the bottle. And what I like about them is they create these very, very nice thin lines, and they can become a design element as much as anything else can. And you know, you can start using these in all kinds of different ways, and a lot of times I will use a thinned liquid acrylic to do this. And you know, there's nothing that says you can't create designs and patterns with these. They will take a little bit longer to dry because they are a bit more dimensional, but I think you can see where this can be kind of an interesting addition to this. Now the one thing I do want to show you is that, remember, this is the back side of the finished piece. The front side is actually going to look like this, and when we get this a little bit further along, I think you'll see it a little bit more clearly, but this is what we're heading toward. So I'm going to let this dry. I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back for the next layer, and I'm going to use this ribbed piece of stamping material. And notice that I've put a handle on here to make it easier to handle, make it easier to deal with. And we're just going to start putting some sort of a pattern on here. I sort of like this kind of ribbed pattern. I think it can be kind of fun. It's doesn't always show up as rib patterns, but sometimes just as lines or blobs. But whatever it is, it's always kind of interesting and certainly different. And I'm probably going to end up doing many layers on this, but I think you can see how it starts to build up and sort of becomes a fascinating process overall. But that's where I'm heading right at the moment. One of the things that I like playing with a lot with these is stencils, and this is a stencil that I've cut quite a while back. And there are still quite a few clear areas in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stencil this circle pattern onto here, and then we'll take a look at what it's going to look like on the other side. I'm not being really fussy about the color as far as being consistent. I just want to make sure that I see something of those circles appearing on the other side. And so I am going to just quickly sponge this pattern onto here, and we'll get an idea of what it's going to look like very soon. And I could see all kinds of possibilities for this. There's also the possibilities of doing cutouts when you're doing these, where you literally just cut out sections of this acrylic sheet and start with the second, third, fourth pattern of your choosing. Pretty much it right here. Going to turn it over so we can get to see what it looks like. And there it is. You can see some of that blue coming through. Very cool. Alright, I'm going to let this dry, and we're going to head off into the finishing off segment. I have put several clear layers of gel medium on here, about 3, that I applied with a credit card. This is to build up the thickness of the material so it's easier to deal with. What I'm going to do now is start cutting it apart. I really do like this idea of being able to cut things up and use them again, and use them in different ways that initially may not have been intended. So just a very quick little piece here. Let's just do a diamond pattern and see if we can get this up off the surface. This is probably the most delicate thing that's going to happen, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to remove it from the glass, and there it is. See, that one didn't come out quite successfully. I will use that. I will definitely use that. I rather like that look. Let me try another one. Sometimes with these things, the best success is failure. It looks like it may not quite be ready to be lifted yet. May need to dry just a little bit more. I will be back when it has dried. It did take me a few minutes to figure this out, but I found that if I used a palette knife, I could just very carefully come underneath here and lift this piece out, and there is a full diamond of the piece. And notice that I've turned it right side up. This is the side that I'm most interested in, and I think this is rather successful. This one happens to be just a little bit delicate. I probably could let it dry for a few more hours, which I think I will do after I finish this video. Hope this has got you thinking about things, and I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you. Just a little last minute add-on. While it's not all successful, depending on how you define success, I think these shapes have turned out very well. I like some of the patterning, and even these that have pieces missing out of them I find very exciting, and I will be using these in some of my work, so don't be surprised to see these coming up in the future. Thank you.